Fox News alert, political shockers setting in and setting off alarms for the Democrats ahead of the midterm elections, while dealing a devastating blow for President Biden. And we now await the results and the still too close to call governor's race in, as I've been calling it, cobalt blue Jersey, because it is, on the heels of the shakeup in Virginia, where Republican Glenn Youngkin just pulled off a big upset in the governor's race there. He beat Terry McAuliffe, a former governor, a Democrat, and turned that blue state red.
We are going to go to work on day one. There are always those. There's those that say that that hill is too steep to climb. But we are empowered. We're empowered by a conviction, a righteous conviction in our children's future. We're strengthened by our collective belief in the Virginia promise. So let's climb that hill together. Let's reinvigorate our future. Let's reinvigorate this amazing Commonwealth of Virginia.
You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. My co-hosts Emily Campagno, Kayleigh McEnany are here. Anchor and executive editor of The Story, Martha McCallum, is here. And in the center seat, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Youngkin's stunning victory last night in Virginia is raising all sorts of concerns now for the Democrats about their chances in 2022, especially since the Democrat, Terry McAuliffe, brought out the party's big stars to get there. They just weren't enough to turn things around, which must have come as quite a surprise to President Biden, given his comments yesterday.
We're going to win. I think we're going to win in Virginia. The race is very close. So it's about who shows up, who turns out. And granted, I did win by a large margin. I don't believe, and I've not seen any evidence that whether or not I am doing well or poorly, whether or not I've got my agenda passed or not, is going to have any real impact on winning or losing.
Juan Williams, he did win that state by 10 points. And that county that counted so heavily, Loudoun County, and has been quite loud about the issues that the people there say they care about, he won by 15%. What happened last night? And how much of President Biden's mojo was put on display as depleting?
Well, it was fright night for Democrats, Harris. I think it's like a late Halloween, you know. I mean, it's where they say a hot mess, a dumpster fire, a highway pileup. Not a good night for the Democrats. And I think you're seeing it this morning in terms of Democratic reaction, which is really, you know, one of shock and remorse. I think as a result, you're going to see more action right now in Washington on all the bills that have been delayed. I think there's going to be an urgency about that. But what I think in terms of Virginia especially, but also, boy, that New Jersey race is a shocker too.
Right.
I think that, you know, what you've got to see here is that for Republicans, Youngkin, the winner, really was an optimistic guy, you know, a millionaire, billionaire type from the hedge fund stuff. And I think people like winners and they like optimism. And right now, given the Democrats in Washington, they don't have the results to show from Biden or Democratic control of the Senate and House of Representatives. The Democratic agenda remains popular in terms of things like, you know, paid leave for maternity, preschool for children.
Yeah, but that's on the Democrats.
Lower drug
because if
prices.
they have something that they think is so popular and they can't sell it, that's on them.
That's a bigger issue. I think you're onto
that's
something.
on them.
I think you're onto something there. I think the messaging is off, especially, you know, like they already did the COVID bill without any Republican support, but COVID really didn't prove to be a major issue in Virginia or in New Jersey. So I think that right now this election came at a bad moment in terms of the timing for Democrats because they haven't passed these last two bills and because Biden's numbers are low.
I want to get back to when you bring in the rock stars, Martha, and there's no concert for you.
Yeah.
Like you bring in everybody, Barack Obama, you bring them all in, and when the singing stops, the crowd's like, did somebody play?
Yeah, you know what, Harris? I think there's a big message in last night's election, which is continuing today, and that is that Democrats and the people that you see up on the screen right now, from the former President Obama on down, they can no longer rely on the suburbs and the blue-collar workers of America to be in lockstep with them. I think that one of the things that we learned last night in looking at the exit polls is that they want something that they're not getting. They want something that centers more around security and law enforcement. We saw what happened in Minnesota last night, where they said, no, we don't want to defund the police. In fact, we want more police. We want to be safer on our streets. So there's a disconnect that has happened, and there's a big wake-up call, as I say, especially in the suburbs, where you see white women making a different decision than they made in 2020. And looking for someone who kind of speaks their language a little bit more in terms of education and the issues they care about: inflation, economy, jobs. Those are the top performing issues that were decision makers last night. And I think that if Democrats think that they should move forward and with urgency, as Juan just said, and try to get these bills passed, I think they better take another look at these bills, because 60% of Fox News poll. And the Fox News poll said that they didn't think that passing this bill was going to help the economy, or it might have no impact. So I'm not sure that passing those bills with urgency is necessarily a good political strategy.
It's also interesting, Martha, as you drill down into some of the polling, what people are also saying is they don't know enough about them to know whether or not they'd help or not. So they just aren't going to trust that. And that, again, is a Democrat thing. That's an issue thing. And we've already seen it. Even the progressives are upset because there's no legislative text. And then Senator Joe Manchin, who gets, credit for being more moderate in the party, certainly a fighter, says, I don't have anything in writing. I'm not signing anything. I mean, it seems to be the Nancy Pelosi way of doing it. Pass it, and then you'll find out what's in it. And I think people have just had enough. Like, they don't want to guess anymore. Kayleigh, I'm curious about, you're in the White House, and you've been there. You're in the White House, you're trying to figure out what the messaging should be to the people when you know you're not winning. And you think maybe your agenda is popular, but you still can't sell it. You have all these things you can't. You couldn't even sell a shot. Yeah. You couldn't sell the shot that the previous president came up with in record world time and saved so many lives. You couldn't even sell it when it worked.
That's exactly right. So what is the White House doing? It's really telling what the White House is doing today. No public events on President Biden's schedule. No press briefing today. The White House is essentially in hiding because they do not have a message other than doubling down on these spending bills, which I totally agree should be reassessed, given that they've been rejected in our Fox News polling, given what happened last night, a resounding message. I mean, last night was a shellacking. To put this into perspective, you had a political novice and Glenn Youngkin, someone who never run for office, someone who had 2% name ID, 2% when he began this, defeat the entire Democrat establishment, President Barack Obama, President Biden, Kamala Harris, Terry McAuliffe, who was a once popular governor. He defeated them all. And why? Because of the failures of the Biden presidency, which dovetailed with the rise of Glenn Youngkin. Exactly. Afghanistan happened in August. Glenn Youngkin started to rise. All of a sudden, McAuliffe took Biden off of his mailers. He essentially evaporated from the race. He wouldn't say his name on the debate stage. Terry McAuliffe called his own president unpopular, but Joe Biden still insisted on coming to Virginia.
Whose name he did keep saying on the debate stage? Not the debate stage, but in his ads, and I should say the stump, was Donald Trump. Right. He even lied and said that Donald Trump was physically with the Republican candidate the night before. That was just Monday of this week. Yeah, that's exactly right. And how did that work out? It was a big old fat one, so it didn't work out. Right. I mean, it wasn't just a lie. As my mom used to say, it's a big fat lie. You can't even clean it up aisle 7. So let me ask you this. What has changed in these blue states? Is it the people or is it the candidates?
Well, I think it's a reflection of both. And just to comment on Donald Trump for a second, remember he said the current election is about the current president, not the past one. That's a lesson that Terry McAuliffe learned the hard way last night. But all you need to know about why Youngkin won in Virginia is, number one, who was in the audience in his victory speech? Did you guys see the signs that were there? Parents for Youngkin, Latinos for Youngkin, small business owners for Youngkin, law enforcement for Youngkin, and my personal favorite, Democrats for Glenn, because he campaigned on the issues. And to your point, Harris, he doubled down on what issues, as polls reflected, were most important there to Virginia voters. Education, economy, things that matter to people that they see, the value of the dollar, inflation, who listens to them. He said, I will listen to parents. Remember how McAuliffe campaigned? He said parents have no voice at the table under my watch. That is why when they brought out the establishment, Obama and Kamala and Biden, it didn't succeed because the American people don't care about showboating or performative action or what posters you can throw up on a stage. They care about what matters to them, what impacts them at home. And that is what Youngkin knew, grasped, campaigned on, and will deliver.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, one of the things that I noticed last night, you saw it with Curtis Sliwa, the Republican who didn't win for mayor in New York City, and a former Republican who's now Democrat, Eric Adams, actually did win. You saw in the speeches, and you saw it there with Youngkin in his speech, this sort of a high road of, I'm talking directly to the people.
Yes.
That the politicians are somewhere over here, down here. He's raised, and both of them, you saw Curtis Sliwa do it. Yeah, didn't win, but I want everything to rise.
Which is what Trump did. I'm talking to the forgotten man and woman. He looked beyond the political class and at the people.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.